Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're going to start a brand new RimWorld series. As with any new series, we're going to show the version number right there, and we'll also make sure that you get the same exact seed in case you want to play along. Now, plenty of folks inside of our community have said they have not played RimWorld, so as the standard, we'll make sure we'll explain all of our choices that we make, and I'll also be listening to the comments to sort of guide the colony in a direction that'll dictate how this colony thrives and survives. We're going to go with the standard crash landed, which for those of you new means we start with 3 folks, small little care package of sorts, and is considered the sort of de facto standard way to start. And the next screen, we get to go with the Storyteller, and we get the choices between Cassandra Classic, Phoebe Chillax, and Randy Random. Now, we always go with Randy Random because we like pain, and also because the random way they generate events causes it to be more fun in the video. Now, normally we go with losing is fun, but it's been a quick minute since I've played, so we're going to go back down to blood and dust, which is still going to give us a significant challenge. And because we're doing this for YouTube, we're going to go with reload anytime mode, just in case there's any sort of problems. I'll be able to reload back in and not have to sacrifice the entire series because of one glitch or bug. Now, here's some more settings that we can really dictate how the world looks when it's created. We're not going to mess with any of it. It looks fine just the way it is, except our seed name. Once again, because we like pain, and Ed has had a history of providing some very awful colonies, we're going to go ahead and name the seed after Ed, our community member. We're going to keep all the same official content. We have royalty installed and ideology, and just a few mods shown here. And now we get to pick where in this world we are going to start. If you're up for a particular challenge, you could always go with one of these hexes inside the ice sheet. But I don't think we're going to do that. We want to be able to build this colony out. And I also want to be able to start around some existing factions. Like here is the Grave Cave Union. Here's the Lion Men, who start off at -100 in their hostility. And after scrolling around the map for a little while, I think I've settled on this area here, right outside the Purple Beef Forest region. There's some friendlies around here, there's some Empire, and then there's some hostiles. So I think it gives us a good mix of not only terrain, but also other factions. So we're just going to pick this tile right here, a little bit away from the road and the water, and that should be good. Now for this series, I'm excited to try out this new option, and we're going to keep the ideology system inactive. The content will still be there, so we'll still see it everywhere. We just ourselves will not be participating in the ideologies. Now for the fun part, and that's picking your starting pawns. Now, like I said earlier, we're going to go over some of this stuff for some of our newer community members, but we're going to do it at a higher level because this game will get as deep as you want. For instance, you can read their childhood experiences and see how their stats and everything are affected. Same thing for adulthood. You can look at the faction they currently belong to. You can get really, really deep. Additionally, when you're picking out your starting pawns, these team skills takes the highest score from the 3 pawns you have selected and puts it here so you can kind of see what your team looks like and see if you have any gaps. Now, something to note, I had already recorded this once, and then I hit the escape key because I thought it was going to bring up the menu, but sadly it does not. So when you go back forward, it gives you all new pawns. Not exactly what you want when you're trying to record a video. So I'm going to go through these characters and see which 3 pawns are going to make the cut. One note as I go through these, you can also hit this randomize button and change this pawn, and you keep going until you get the perfect pawn. We're not going to hit that button. We're going to take 3 out of the selection that it gave us, but the option is there if it's something you want to use. So here's what we ended up with. We start with 18-year-old Ernesto, who looks like they were cryogenically frozen about 2,800 years ago. They're a fast learner, which helps increase all their skills. Unfortunately, they're also too smart, which means their mental break threshold is going to be higher. Now, when you're looking at these pawns, pay attention to the 1 flame and 2 flame traits. 1 flame means that they have an interest in doing those tasks, and they will learn it faster. Double flames mean they have a burning passion for that task and will learn it at 150%. We also have Gracie, who's really good on the social and intellectual side. Unfortunately, they're also nervous, which is another increase to our mental break threshold. And then finally is our third pawn. Now, normally, your third pawn is going to be a tough choice because there are a lot of bad pawns. For instance, Julia here starts with alcohol addiction and alcohol tolerance. They're also a pyromaniac on top of it. This is not a good combination. And Nicholas here was a maybe just because of their shooting and melee skills by themselves, and they're also a pyromaniac, which means our base is more likely to go up in flames. No, thank you. Now, we're definitely going to give our pawns names from our communities because that's how we do. So here's a list of all of the current YouTube and Patreon members as of today. And I've got a simple little algorithm here. We're just going to slide it down by 3. And these are the 3 dupes that we're going to start with. Dupe 1, 2, and 40. So it's going to be Miko Nala, John Mann, and Richard Dangling. And whenever we need a new pawn name, we'll just continue to drag further down. And for those of you curious, when you looked at the Excel formula, yes, this includes 1 and 45 as possible solutions. With our 3 starting pawns selected and named, it's time to start. Now every map sort of starts the same. 3 pawns wake up from a cryo sleep and barely make it to the escape pods before their ship is torn apart. And here we are landing, we get our bunch of stuff, and you instantly want to pause. Zoom out and then take a quick appraisal of the area. You want to see if this is actually where you want to set up shop here, or do you want to move somewhere else? The disadvantage of moving somewhere else is you then also have to pick up all this stuff and move it as well, which would take you quite a few trips. Now this episode is going to be concerned with sort of getting our colony set up and on the right path. This means some sort of shelter, making sure we have food coming in, and finally making sure they have the bare minimum of requirements so that they don't lose their minds. And as a special treat, it looks like we landed with a little Yorkshire Terrier named Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Now, as standard in all of the new games, you have to select your goodies and select allow. Now, what a lot of people do, in fact, we'll draft these folks to get them out of the way real quick to show you, is you can actually select all your stuff and then click allow at once. Some folks will zoom out the entire map, highlight everything, and click allow. I don't recommend that because you never know what the pawns are going to get, or more precisely, what kind of danger they're going to put themselves into. Additionally, one of the reasons why you want to draft your pawns immediately is because you want them to be able to go equip and grab their weapons and gear. So we're going to allow all this equipment, and then we'll pick out who's going to wear what. Richard Dangling has our best shooting and melee skills, so they're probably going to be our primary fighter. So we're going to have them go equip the bolt action rifle, then grab the helmet, put on some of the flak pants, and even grab the flak vest. Now you'll notice I'm holding shift while I'm doing all this so that Richard does it in order. Otherwise, for instance, in the case of Miko Nala, we're going to have them equip the revolver, but if I went over here and said, hey, wear these cintered pants, it would interrupt them and they wouldn't put the pants on, for instance. But with all that being done, we're just going to go undraft everybody, which means that they're all on their own to do whatever commands we tell them as far as the primary work schedule list. And just like in Oxygen Not Included, this works from left and right. So they're going to do all the firefighting tasks before they'll do the researching tasks. And the game sort of starts by giving you the recommended of what everybody's going to be doing. Sometimes it doesn't exactly mash up, but for start, it works. Now it's time to get working on a little bit of shelter. We have plenty of trees around here, which means we can use some wood. There's a bunch of marble over here that I'd rather make the walls out of because, well, marble doesn't burn like wood does. And if you remember from our previous attempt in RimWorld, our entire colony burnt down. Yeah, our only options right now are wood, steel, and silver. So we're going to go with wood. Oh, I think we'll just start it right here. That looks big enough there. Come straight down. Perfect. I mean, that looks decent. We'll cancel one of these so that way we're able to build a door right there. And you'll notice that I'm building it against this sort of mountain here. The reason why we're doing this is this way we don't actually have to build 4 walls. And when the time comes, we'll be able to dig all this out and build more rooms and everything in here, saving a little bit of material and making it more defensible. Now, just because I've played this game enough, I'm pretty sure this is going to be an actual cavern that's going to have what they call ancient dangers in it. but we'll deal with that when we get there. Now you may have noticed that it said we don't have access to any wood or a short wood when we're building those walls, and that's because none of these stacks of wood were actually allowed to be used. So we'll select them all and make sure they're allowed. A quick note on zones. We're going to set up a couple of zones. Zones are RimWorld's way of telling the pawns where they can drop things. So we're going to create two zones, one here and one, say, right here. Then we're going to select the zones and pick out what we want to be stored here. So we're going to click clear all, and we're going to make sure all of our foods are in here, any sort of manufactured equipment, all of our items, our weapons, and our apparel. Now, in this zone down here, we'll clear all once again. We're going to put all our building material, for instance, chunks, which is considered these giant chunks of material, and raw resources. That'll be a good start. So without even telling the pawns what to do, they'll start building stuff and then start hauling the things to the two different zones. Now you'll notice that each wall takes 5 wood. So I don't think that we have enough altogether, but when the time comes, we'll also do some chopping here. Going back to our architect screen, we can go to orders and say chop wood. That looks good. And then when we unpause, the pawns will get to work. And just as we suspected, as soon as Miko got next to this wall, they had that sense like something was the matter. And sure enough, there is an ancient danger in there. Now, all that means is there could be some goodies in there. There also could be some enemies. Now, as the pawns move things inside these stockpiles, you'll notice on the top left, it updates our inventory. This is not saying what's available all around the map, but rather what is available in our stockpiles. And luckily, John Mann is a beast at construction. They're already making great progress with these walls. Now, once the walls are complete, they'll automatically start building the roof, and then we'll put a floor in. That way it stays nice and clean. I mean, our pawns don't want to sleep on the dirt. Speaking of which, we need to see what kind of animals are here. Here's a mega sloth, but I don't think we're at the point where we can mess with them yet. Oh, perfect. It's a pack of gazelles. When the time comes and we have a butcher table and a kitchen ready, we'll definitely do some hunting from this pack. Lots of good minerals around here. We have some compacted machinery, compacted steel. Then down here we have a nice smorgasbord, some silver ore, some more steel, some gold. Now some of the things that aren't naturally yours, for instance, these granite chunks. If you wanted to move these into your stockpile, all you would do is select them and hit haul. Because they're naturally just part of the environment, the pawns don't know that, hey, these are ours, let's get them. Here's John Mann starting to put in the roof. This is good, which means it's probably time to start on that floor. Now, we don't have a bunch of these materials, so we're just going to go with another wood floor type. I don't love putting all the wood here. Once again, it does make it very risky when it comes to fires. But as soon as we're able to, we're going to replace all this wood with something like steel or granite or marble. Here's an example of us not using the ideology content, but Richard is still doing his meditating, which is great because it's going to give them a mood bonus. So we'll still see ideological content. We're just not going to be going down the path of creating a church and all that. Now we need to start building some stuff inside of our little structure here. For instance, the pawns don't like being in the dark, so we're going to put a small torch lamp right here. Absolutely perfect for a house made of wood. We also need to put a spot for Barbara to sleep, so we're going to build a small animal sleeping box right here. It's going to be perfect for Barbara. Now over here in recreation, we want to make sure that the pawns have something to do, otherwise they will go absolutely nuts. So we're going to put a nice wooden horseshoe pin right here, and then I think we're going to put a chess table, say right here where John Mann is. Now the chess table will need a couple of little stools. Oh, that's beautiful. Speaking of which, let's put a table over here so they have some place to eat. Oh, let's put it in here in the corner. Oh, beautiful. We'll put a couple of dining chairs around here. All this is being made with wood because, you know, we don't have many options. 3 chairs is good because we only have 3 pawns. And all of this is going to take a month of Sundays to build anyways. And then finally we need some beds. Now they're not going to have bedrooms. We're just going to have everybody sleeping in this one big room for now. We'll make the accommodations better as we go. All right, well this is not good. Barbara has the plague. Let's see what we can do. All right, it's a minor plague, which means they're just in a little bit of pain. I don't think they're in significant risk, so they'll be okay. Now, even though we're sitting at 211 wood, we still need a lot more in order to build all these floors and all that furniture. So we are going to go ahead and chop this wood here, which we're going to need to do anyways, because this is where I think our kitchen and everything is going to go. And as expected, our pawns are going to be pretty upset because they're sleeping on the ground. Now, Richard and Miko could have easily slept inside to at least be protected from the elements. As you can see, just the addition of walls causes the indoor to be about 10 degrees warmer than the outside. And here's the example that we were just talking about. We're getting a warning that the outdoor temperature is going to reach 40 degrees. In other words, you should have slept inside. It's morning in day 2 and we already have completed our beds, a lot of the floors going in. We got our first dining chair and it's actually of good quality too, which means one of our builders is pretty good. We've got our first morning of a minor break rest. So we select John Mann here and we can see all the things that are giving them the negatives. They've been in the darkness for too long because the torch is not finished. They slept on the ground and they slept in the cold. So all these negatives are sort of adding up and reducing their mood. But I highlight these because use these as a guide of sort of where to send the direction of your colony. For instance, we're checking off a lot of these. We're building a table so they can eat at the table. We built them shelters so they could sleep inside, not in the cold and not on the ground. In the beginning of day 3, we actually have some visitors from the Gray Cave Union. It looks like they all have beards. I think that's a beard. Some of them even have face tattoos, and they're really interrupting John Mann's game of horseshoes here. And I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't look like these folks are here to trade. They're just coming to visit. And just like that, our visitors are now leaving. Thanks for stopping by. You were utterly useless. So Barbara's plague has taken a turn for the worse. They've almost been gotten at 93%, but their immunity is climbing. If their immunity reaches 100% before the plague reaches 100%, I think they'll be fine. But right now, it's not looking great. You can make it, Barbara. We're actually using good medicine, too. We're going to change it up to the best quality medicine for Barbara to try to save their life. As if things weren't bad enough with Barbara, we actually have a raid about to attack us. Thank you, Randy. Now, the raid only consists of one pawn, it looks like, from the Lirla Alliance. So we're going to take a couple of pawns and go mess up old Carver Duffy. Make them regret the day they ever interrupted us trying to treat Barbara and her plague. Now, Miko has a knife, Richard has the bolt-action rifle, and John Mann has absolutely nothing because they didn't listen earlier. We need to make sure that they are equipping the revolver. We're going to draft all 3 of them. Then we're just going to line them up right about, say, here. And that should be plenty to take care of the person with the short bow. Miko's going into fisticuffs with the knife. And down goes Carver Duffy. I think we're going to have Miko take the short bow. It stinks, but at least it's range. We're definitely going to strip Carver. They don't need any of their clothes anymore. And then we're going to take the herbal medicine. And then we'll undraft all of our folks. And they'll get back to business. The worst injuries came out of John Mann, who would be dead in 11 hours. They have a couple of cuts from the short bow, but we'll get them patched up and in bed immediately. Sadly, though, Barbara didn't make it. Their immunity was 99%. Makes me wonder what would have happened if we would have gave them the medicine sooner. I'm sorry, Barbara. Richard's being amazing, giving John Mann the good medicine, and we can see that their torso's been bandaged up, and they're no longer in any immediate danger. With Miko on the mend, they're building a grave for our wonderful Barbara. One thing to note about the graves, when they finish being built, you have to go to storage here and allow animal corpses. Things are rather slow going because John Mann is still laying up in bed. Despite the fact that both of their cuts being bandaged, I mean, they're at 99 and 100% on everything except blood filtration. Let's get it together, John. But apparently they have enough energy to play horseshoes. All right, our initial structure's complete. We have our table where the colonists can eat. We have a chess table with a couple of stools. We have an unowned doggy bed. I'm not crying, you're crying. We got a few beds here. We even have a rotting corpse. Now it's time to build what's probably going to be your first production machine. And that's the butcher's table and the oven. Now we're going to set it up like this. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to look quite yet, but we'll check it out here. The 3 now healthy ponds have done a good job building that pretty quickly. So now we're going to throw in a butcher's table right about here, and then a fueled stove. It's not going to run off of electricity. Instead, it's just going to run off of wood, and that will go right there. And because they want to be able to sit down while they work, we'll put a couple of chairs. Very nice. Now, one of the things that's going to happen after a few days, you're going to have to name your faction. So we're going to go with Ridgeback Roughnecks, and we're going to name this specific settlement Echo Ridge. I am looking forward to reading the comments and reading the 150 better ideas than these 2 names. And look at this, it's a trade caravan. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of goodies they have. Now, John Mann has the highest social, so we're going to send them to go talk to Jordan here. Right-click Jordan, click trade, and we get a beautiful trade menu. Now, we're not going to be able to do too much because we don't have any animals to sell. We don't have any cool art pieces or any weapons, but I still wanted to get a look and see what they had. They do have an herbal medicine here. I think we're going to take it, but other than that, that will about do it. So our kitchen area is about complete. Before we put in the floors, I wanted to highlight what we're going to be doing with them. The first thing we're going to have is this butcher table. We're going to create a bill. And what a bill is sort of an order that your pawns will pay attention to. So when we add it, we're going to say, hey, butcher creatures. When we select this button here, do X times, you can change the option to do forever. So any creatures that we manage to hunt and kill, they'll come back here and get butchered. When you click on the details button, it's going to give you a lot of additional options to customize this bill. For instance, you can decide which type of animal corpses are done at this table and sort of separate maybe an assembly line where some animals come in through one butcher table and then other animals come in through another. You can also select a specific worker, and you can also define how far it is that they're going to go look for their ingredients right here. For now, though, the default options work well. And then we have a regular fueled stove. Now you'll notice I have a separate little zone right here that we have wood being piled up in it. We just selected a 1-tile zone and made it the preferred spot for all wood. That way they bring wood here before they bring it down here, which means it'll be conveniently located when somebody goes to use the stove, they'll have the fuel right here. But once again, we got to create a bill. For now, we're just going to start with cooked simple meals. But as you can see, there's a lot of different options. But for the meal prep, because the meals are perishable, we're only going to do it until we have X amount of meals. So we're going to say until we have 12 meals. And then once again on the details pane, you can define what kind of meats you want to use for that simple meal, what kind of veggies, and a lot of other detailed options. And then finally, we have this blank space here. We're going to bring all of our meals here. And we're going to make sure it's a preferred priority to bring our meals here. And then we're going to remove the meals from this area. You're going to see why we do that here in a minute. But we don't want the meals to go there first. And the reason why is because when the cook is sitting here cooking, we don't want them to take the completed meal, walk it all the way over here, and then walk all the way back to the stove. So we're going to make another stockpile zone right next to it. This is stockpile zone 5. In stockpile zone 5, we're going to select meals as well, and then put it on a low priority. And that way, the cook's going to drop all the meals off at stockpile zone 5, and then someone else will come grab them from zone 5 and move them over here to zone 3. At least, that's the theory. In addition to meals, though, we need a place for all the corpses that we end up hunting and killing. So we're going to select animal corpses here. And now that our sort of standard kitchen area is ready, it's time to go hunting. To do that, we're just going to select a couple of these does here and click hunt. And here comes Richard doing the hunting. Now, he's not a great shot, so it's going to take them a little while to end up killing these does. In fact, you can see this one's ran all the way over here and has not even been hit yet. And after a month of Sundays, Richard is successful and we have one ibex doe. The ibex doe is being put in our stockpile zone just as we intended. And then here comes Miko, our cook, taking the doe to the butcher table and starting to chop it up. And then from here, it gets stored in our stockpile zone until Miko gets around to cooking it. And you'll notice when they cook it, they end up putting it right here where somebody else comes and puts it over in this zone. Now, this isn't 100% opportune because they're still going back here and grabbing additional meat. So I think we're going to change this bill to a cook simple meal times 4. And that way, maybe they'll bring more meat at a time instead of going back and forth so many times. And because Randy is Randy, and he wanted to interrupt our awesome kitchen and cooking explanation, he has sent us a man-hunting mad squirrel. Now, this is going to be interesting because this clan is still in the area, which they have more than enough firepower to take care of a mad squirrel. But just in case, we're going to draft our folks and line them up, which stinks because Richard was way out there. In fact, we're going to let Richard stay out there hunting. That's a long way back. And of course, the squirrel's coming after Richard first. So because we're too close to fire at with the rifle, we're going to try punching the squirrel in the face. There's a quick stun, and now we've killed the squirrel. Richard ends up with just a bruised right shoulder from the squirrel teeth. But you know what? This is going to be more food and more pelts from the butcher table. Thank you, Randy, for being the gift that keeps on giving. And Miko's cooking up that squirrel now. That about wraps it up for our very first episode in this new RimWorld series. I am by no means an expert at this game. I have some casual experience and I'll do my best to show you the ropes. But if you have specific questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Additionally, if you have recommendations, that's not a problem either. In fact, I'll be using your comments to find out where this colony is going to be going. I know for episode 2, for instance, we're probably going to start by adding some electricity and making this a cooler, and that way our meals don't spoil in quite so soon of a time. But other than that, the sky's the limit. I hope you had fun with this episode. I know I did, and I'll talk to you soon.